World War II is often remembered through famous names: generals, presidents, dictators. But history almost always forgets those who actually carried the war on their backs. This is not a story about power. This is a story about forgotten heroes, men and women who saved lives, held the line, and changed the course of the war, without medals, without fame, and often without coming home. The war no one was ready for. When World War II began, the world was completely unprepared for its scale. Millions of ordinary people became soldiers overnight: farmers, teachers, workers, students. People with no combat experience were thrown into a hell of steel, fire, and blood. For most of them, this war was not a choice. It was a sentence. History remembers dates and battles, but it rarely remembers faces. The medics on the front line. In war, there is an unspoken rule. When the shooting starts, soldiers look for cover. But there was a group of people who moved in the opposite direction. They were the medics. They did not go into battle to win. They went where people were dying. In many armies, combat medics were not allowed to carry weapons. Their only protection was a red armband and the hope that the enemy would show mercy. But mercy in war is rare. Fire, blood, and seconds to decide. Under artillery fire, a medic had seconds to decide who to save first, who could be saved, and who could not. Every mistake meant death. They crawled through mud, under bullets, through smoke and screams, sometimes for yards, sometimes for hours. All of it without a weapon. The story of one man among them was an army medic named Desmond Doss. He refused to carry a weapon because of his religious beliefs. Many saw him as weak, some called him a coward. But on the battlefield, he proved stronger than most. Under constant fire, he carried wounded soldiers to safety one by one. When asked why he did not retreat, he answered simply, "Lord, help me save one more." The price of saving lives. Casualties among medics were often higher than among regular soldiers. The enemy knew, kill the medic, and dozens would die. Many medics were killed without receiving a single medal. Their names never appeared in reports. But to the men they saved, they were everything. Forgotten. After the war. After the war, many returned home with invisible wounds. They remembered the screams, the smell of blood, the faces of those they could not save. They were rarely called heroes, but without them, this war would have taken millions more lives.
The women without whom the war would have been lost. When people talk about World War II, they usually imagine men with guns, but without women, this war would have been lost. They rarely charged into battle. They were rarely on the front line, but they held the world together. The invisible front. While battles raged, millions of women fought their own war. They worked in factories, producing planes, tanks, and ammunition. They became nurses, pulling wounded soldiers from under fire. They were radio operators, sending messages that entire operations depended on. And they were code breakers. Women who cracked the war behind the front lines. Another critical battle was being fought, the battle for information. Thousands of women worked to break enemy codes. They spent endless hours staring at streams of symbols where a single mistake could cost lives. If they failed, soldiers died. If they succeeded, the war moved closer to its end. Courage without applause. Many of these women never carried weapons, but the psychological pressure they faced was no less than that of soldiers at the front. They knew their decisions sent men either to their deaths or back home, and yet their names remained classified. Returning to silence? After the war, many women returned to civilian life. They were told to forget, not to speak, not to remember. Their contribution never entered textbooks. Their sacrifices never became movies, but without them, this war would have lasted much longer. A weapon that could not be broken. World War II was not won by weapons alone. It was won by information. In the Pacific War, the United States faced a serious problem. Japanese intelligence was quickly breaking American military codes. Every intercepted message meant an ambush, encirclement, death. A code was needed that could not be broken. An unexpected solution. The solution came from a people rarely mentioned at the time, the Navajo. Their language had no written form, was not studied outside the tribe, and was incredibly complex. Thus, the code talkers were born, radio operators whose weapon was their native language. Radio calls under fire during battles. They sat at their radios transmitting orders under enemy fire. If a code talker was captured, he would be executed immediately. Some were even assigned guards from their own units to prevent deadly mistakes. Their voices could decide the fate of a battle. A secret kept for decades after the war, their mission remained classified. They were forbidden to speak about what they had done. For decades, they remained silent. No parades, no medals, no recognition. Only in the late 20th century did the world learn that one of the most secure codes in history was a human language. Voices that saved thousands. The code talkers did not fire more bullets than others. They did not charge first into battle, but without them, operations would have failed, troops would have walked into traps, and the war would have lasted longer. Their contribution is measured not in victories, but in lives saved. Those who never came home. Not all heroes survived World War II. Millions of soldiers never returned home. Some were killed in battle, others died of wounds. Many went missing. They had no graves, no names on memorials, no goodbyes. They simply vanished into the statistics of war. Those who returned but never left the war, but there were also those who survived physically, yet never truly returned. After the war, they were called broken. Today, we call it post-traumatic stress disorder. Nightmares, flashbacks, survivor's guilt, they carry the war inside them for the rest of their lives. Why history forgot them? History does not like complex stories. It is easier to talk about victories, generals, and dates. Forgotten heroes did not fit into a convenient narrative. They were ordinary people, no speeches, no medals, no power. Yet they were the ones who held the world together. Remembrance is a choice. Memory is not automatic, it is a choice. Each generation decides who is remembered. And when we forget ordinary people who did extraordinary things, we lose the true meaning of history. Final, remembering the forgotten. The forgotten heroes of World War II did not ask for glory. They asked for one thing, that the person beside them would survive. They did not write history, they lived it. And if today we live in a world that still exists, it is largely because of them. History may forget names, but we must not.